Welcome to the Poke It podcast with me, Nicola Cairncross, and my co-host, Pete Jenkins. In the show, we'll be getting deeply interested in everything and everyone, including business and entrepreneurship, investing, crypto, great films, books and sci-fi, served up with great food and wine, and a little bit of gamification and the odd guest thrown in for good measure. You can join in the conversation anytime at the Poke It podcast private group on Facebook. Now let's see what we're going to be poking at today, shall we? Connecting and we're live. So welcome, Pete. Welcome back to Poke It podcast.
It's good to be back for another week.
Yes, it is. And we've seen an unusual amount of each other this week, haven't we?
We have. We have finally managed to go for lunch.
Yes.
In the real world.
Yeah, in the real world. Something we've been waiting for since when was the last time?
Before COVID.
Before Christmas. I saw you in the evening before March, but there we go. So what have you been up to this week apart from having lunch with me?
Apart from having lunch with you, gosh, I went to an online Chamber of Commerce event about opening up the city and what people are planning to do, and it was just quite interesting to see that already in the local area we have higher numbers of cases of COVID than Leicester when it locked down. But
hang on, say that again slowly.
So, do you remember Leicester was the first place to lock down in the most recent?
What on this second round of lockdowns?
On this wave of lockdown.
Yes.
Well, Brighton's above that now in terms of the R rate and other things, but there's no plans to lock us down to the same level because they're just treating it differently.
Why?
Yeah, well, quite. Why? Nobody said why. Just because then the whole country would lock down because we're one of the least places in the country for it.
None of it makes any sense because Liverpool was locked down first, and Manchester have got more cases, and London's just been moved from tier 1 to tier 2 or
whatever, yeah,
3 to 2, something like that. And then, but France has gone mad. They've locked down 9 cities overnight for 6 weeks, from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Indeed.
Which I don't know what to make of that at all.
No, I don't. Although I do feel it's quite civilised having the pubs close at 10. Always home in bed by 11. It's very polite.
Well, yeah, we were saying that even the youngsters are quite enjoying that. They get to go out, but they have to go out earlier, and then they get to be home in time to get a decent sleep and be up again the next day. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, what else? I mean, I've been really busy with my conference for the last week, so I'm really excited because I got a first glimpse of the new brand. And for the whole conference, and also the branding for this year's theme of disruption, which looks great. And the font makes you think like you've got something wrong with your eyes because it's all disrupted. It's very clever.
Okay. Well, you can tell us more detail about that because we're going to be talking about organising conferences in our main section today, aren't we?
Oh, well, that's good because that's very relevant to everything I'm doing at the moment.
What else have you done apart from that?
Well, it's just been non-stop with that, really. Recruiting sponsors, getting speakers lined up, setting up systems for dealing with all that.
Okay.
Today I've been teaching for a couple of hours for my students at the university. That's good fun.
Any client work this week?
I feel like there was.
But you can't remember when it was. And we probably talked about it yesterday anyway.
I know. I've had a week's gap for my main consulting client while I'm waiting for them to produce some new designs, but that'll kick off again next week. Cool. What about you? What's your last week been like?
Well, what has it been like? It's been trading Bitcoin. It's been quite a good week for actually making trades, volatile, it's more fun. And I've obviously been doing all the usual stuff, which is just, mentoring my students on the calls that I do on Thursdays. But you'll never guess what? Facebook gave me my ads account back. I don't know what made me go and look. Did I tell you this last week?
I think so, but you didn't really believe it.
I didn't really believe it would last, put it that way. And so I've managed to actually get some ads running. and not get them disapproved, which is great. And I've actually managed to get a couple of leads. So the leads are starting to come now. And the interesting thing about Facebook ads that we all got excited about in the early days was that they said you can optimize for the outcome you want. But everybody discovered that you couldn't just go straight to optimizing for leads or sales because the pixel didn't have any data on the kind of people that would become a lead or become a sale. Yeah. So everybody had to optimize for traffic first and then wait till you got some conversions, but nobody knew how many conversions you needed to get to make the pixel able to go looking for more people like the people who'd done the action you wanted them to. Yeah. So, and we found out after a while that it was quite a disappointingly large number. Well, for small businesses, it's quite disappointingly large in that apparently you needed 50 to 70 conversions a week for the pixel to retain data and be able to carry on looking for the right kind of people. But it's improved, apparently. So you can go straight to conversions now. And I thought I'd try that out because I've always done the whole run a campaign for clicks. But the kind of people click things are not necessarily the kind of people who opt in and then go on to buy. So you might run a campaign for clicks that goes brilliantly, but nobody opts in. So you still haven't got the data. So I think they're trying to encourage people to go straight for the conversions. So I've run a campaign now straight for leads and it's working. I nearly fell off my chair when I saw a lead come through and then a second one. Well, I was so surprised anyway, put it that way. But now I've got to just tweak. I'm split testing 4 different campaigns, 2 different audiences versus 2 different images. So I've got one audience with 2 different images and then a different audience with 2 different images, but they're the same, so I can compare them because my brain implodes when it gets too multivariate, as they call it. So yeah, fingers crossed that'll run now, because if I can get a campaign going where I get decent lead costs, then I can fill up my occasional 5-day challenges, and that'll be that. That's me sorted till something comes along to close my account again. But I'm going to be whiter than white this time. I'm not going to try anything that could even borderline be. And I'm even going to keep my political opinions to myself on my Facebook profile to see if that helps as well. Okay. And
no ad campaigns about aliens or anything like that?
So no updates on that front. But so Bitcoin looking brilliant. I mean, so many big companies now starting to keep their cash reserves in it. I think there's a list of about 7 or 8 now. Big companies. And Raoul Pal. Well, it is, absolutely. And the more people do it, other people respect, the more okay it is for CEOs to say to their shareholders, let's keep some of our cash in Bitcoin to hedge against inflation. What was his name? Michael from MicroStrategy called it. He said he didn't want to be sitting on a melting ice cube of cash over the next 10 to 20 years. He'd much rather be sitting on a nice big growing pile of Bitcoin. So I thought that was a good visual guide for everyone. He's become quite the media star. That chap from MicroStrategy. He's just about being interviewed by everybody because he put 490 million in one hit. So that's all very exciting.
So yes, that he couldn't quite get to 500 million. A nice round number.
Yes, you would round it up, wouldn't you? You would round it up, I'd have thought. It's just a very odd number. But perhaps it was a percentage of his total cash balance.
Yeah, probably. So a sensible figure.
That would make sense, yeah. We're going to do an episode, aren't we, all about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and alternative investments soon?
I think we should, actually, because it's becoming useful for business. So I also think it's going to be interesting to look at how we accept payments as businesses in Bitcoin and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and how because there are certain countries I feel it's being adopted more. If you think about, Beirut, Lebanon, Venezuela, things like that. Anywhere
Mozambique.
Exactly. Anywhere.
Nigeria, huge in Nigeria.
Anywhere with the high inflation, that sort of thing, or like interesting currency issues.
Yeah, I did for a while have a pay in Bitcoin link on my website with my wallet address. It's as easy as that. People just work out what the price of what they're buying is in Bitcoin, send it over. I would perfectly happily accept any payment in Bitcoin.
Do we have a Bitcoin donation button on the podcast then?
We need a Patreon donation button at the very least,
Good idea.
just to cover our hosting costs. But at the moment, it's all good. So let's go on and talk about our main topic then, which was one of your ideas.
What
it was
everything we had for lunch yesterday.
Oh, lunch was good, wasn't it? It was good. Yeah, we had a lovely time. We went to one of my favourite restaurants in Brighton, which was absolutely brilliant. And we had a very leisurely lunch with different wines for each course, didn't we?
Indeed. Yes. And I feel fine today, so there must have been good quality wines. There you go.
Yeah, you had to cycle home, you mental creature.
Yeah, I did wait
he said, I'm going to go and sit in my office for a little while. He was trying to work out how to get home. But it wasn't that bad. It was great. It was very paced, measured and paced, I think you call it.
Yeah, very sensible.
So let's talk about conferences. Let's talk about speaking at them and then moving into organising them, because I think most people start with speaking at them, don't they? Do you remember your first ever public speaking gig?
Yeah, actually, it was before I even joined the Chamber of Commerce 20 years ago. I got invited along to talk about, and it was very exciting. I got invited to talk about group company pension schemes and how exciting they were, and how you could do some interesting things around national insurance rebates and things. So save the company money and put extra money into the employees' pension pots. Okay, because I was a pensions advisor at that point. And do you know what was interesting? So I did this little presentation to the Chamber of Commerce.
It sounds quite interesting, naturally interesting.
Yeah, but also I was scared because I'd never done a public talk before. And I was really young. Gosh, I'm 25 or something like that for a first public talk. But I got a job offer out of it from one of the companies around the table, happened to be in that market and selling pensions. They were like, "Oh, you explained that really well." So I didn't.
And offered you a job.
Yeah, I didn't take it like a fool. Well, I already had a job. That's what I was going for.
But it's relatively to make. Oh, hang on. We've got 1 second. Well, 1 second. We've got an issue with
Audio.
I can't. I can hear you okay, but I think we've got an issue. Hold on.
You're distorting slightly. Go on, do some magical technical
Swap to this
wizardry. Are you still there? So we've lost Nicola. I will talk to myself. Now I suspect she's got internet issues because the electrician came around earlier to her place and turned off all the electrics. So probably something's gone skew-if since. Also, I'm intrigued about whether she'll edit this bit out later. Oh, I hear you again.
I think.
Yes, you're back. I was telling the audience all sorts of dodgy stories about you while you were gone.
Electricians round all morning, so God knows what they've done. We've got a terrible delay.
Yes, it's not the same as normal.
I'm just trying to work out what's causing this terrible delay.
What are you using for your internet?
No, it isn't, is it? Just bear with us, please. I've got two. I'm the best one is for live streaming is the Sith Lord. BT is just hopeless. It's completely. But we've had the electricians in all morning, so I don't know what they've done. Oh, it's getting better.
There you go.
Okay, we're good now, I think.
I think so.
Right.
This is because you said to me yesterday, "Oh, our podcasts are so easy. I never have to edit anything out."
No. Anyway, you were telling us about your first ever gig, or did you finish that story?
I think I finished, but basically I got offered a job. I didn't take it. That was 20 years ago. Then I think that was sufficiently scary. I don't think I did another public talk for another 10 years.
Wow, that's a long time, isn't it? Because you're so outgoing when you're normally.
To be fair, I changed roles after that. So I became more of an IT geek. So I wasn't so public facing. I was just making things work for the next 8 to 10 years. So maybe a bit less. Yeah. But I've spoken at a few odd places. This is where you learn stuff, isn't it? You go and speak at something, you think, this sounds good. You go and speak at like the Great British Business Show in London at Excel or one of the big centres, and you think, this will be great. Then you get there and you're in a partitioned, weird little room. No one can hear you over the noise of 10,000 people networking, even with microphones and stuff. And you go, okay, this is not quite what I was expecting. What about you? What was your first?
Oh, my first was the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants annual conference, and it was at a really swanky place in the country owned by Barclays. It was like a golfing resort or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beautiful old house. It was amazing, and I just had no idea it was going to be that fancy. I thought it was going to be some like 30 accountants in a room somewhere. And I was one of 20 speakers, and there was a dinner and dance the night before with lots of free champagne. So luckily I wasn't on till lunchtime. And it was very entertaining evening all round, and for lots of reasons. And then I had to do my thing. But I put £1 on every chair and told this bunch of accountants who were in my room, breakout room, about 50 people, I suppose, how I was going to show them how to turn that into $1 million, which was pretty bold claim, as I'd only got grade 3 CSE maths and they were all accountants. But I got voted 4th best out of 20 speakers, so that gave me quite a lot of confidence.
Yeah, that's
nice. But then I've just forgotten that I did one before that at the Atlantic Bar and Grill in London in the middle of the dot-com boom, where I was trying to raise money for a business I had called Artist Manager, which was already making passive income. But I was trying to, I can't remember, it was some magazine where you paid quite a big sum of money. It was about £400, I think, to be featured. And if you were chosen as one of the ones they liked, you get to speak and present to venture capitalists in London. And I was last on, and the fire alarm kept going off. So what shall I do? You know, in between deafening noise. And he said, well, you've got to keep going, because if we let them all out of the room, they'll never come back. So
never come back.
You just got to, no, they never come back. So I had to just bellow into the silences in between, because of course when you're trying to speak while the fire alarm's going, and then it goes quiet and you're speaking far too loudly. So it was an utter disaster, and I didn't raise the money, but it didn't matter anyway. And I've done quite a few. Then I went on to speak for the World Internet Summit, which was 1,000 people. Did a couple of those. I'm the only woman to have been invited twice, which was nice. I've spoken for Aussie Online Entrepreneurs a couple of times in Australia, which is nice because you get paid to go and see another country. And that was 200 people. But they were selling gigs where I had to make an offer at the end. The first one wasn't. And I've also spoken for Barclays Bank in London, which I thought was going to be again a tiny room, and it turned out to be a load of people. And I was keynote speaker for the International Coach Federation last year. So I do not very many gigs, but they're quite good ones when I get them.
That's nice,
and I do really enjoy it.
I've had a complete mix of sizes of gig.
Yeah,
because sometimes it might be quite niche, but it's exactly my target audience. So I'll say yeah. So I've definitely spoken at a couple of very specific HR conferences with like 60 or 70 attendees who've paid a lot of money to be there, and they were by far the best lead gen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also, you get to meet most of them and chat.
Well, I always think of every single person in that room having 200 contacts, so I don't mind if it's only 20 people. I mean, I'll go quite happily and give my all to however numbers. I don't think it makes any difference. Like you say, you just don't know who people can introduce you to.
Yeah, although in this instance, there were 60 people who were absolutely fine. They could introduce themselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My biggest audience was probably 1,000.
So then when 1,000. I met one of my heroes at one of the. I spoke at Excel. I've just remembered I spoke at Excel, and there were about 850 people in the room. We were expecting thousands. It was going to be my biggest gig ever, but there was some sort of scheduling problem or something, and there was only 850. But I got to meet Danny Rampling, the DJ. In fact, he bought me a coffee in the queue, and I didn't know who he was, and he said, he introduced himself, and he said, I've been read your book and everything, and I said, oh, lovely to meet you. What's your name? And he said, Danny Rampling. And I was like, what, the DJ from Radio 1? He was like, so I knew all about him, and he knew all about me. It was great.
Well, what a great way to have an introduction.
Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the reasons I like speaking at conferences, is because then loads of people know about you and they've got an easy in to chatting to you. And I realized quite early on, it's best to be one of the first speakers at a conference, because then you stick around. and then people who saw you speak will chat to you in the queue and at other places throughout the day. But if you're the last speaker in the day, everyone just wants to go, and you don't get that. So that's a top tip.
I always try. I'm always trying to stay. Yeah.
Maybe not and trying to all hungover.
Yeah. And first one of the morning is a killer. But also try and have a non-promotional way of people easily getting something, So I often hold, a couple of my books up and just say, if you want a free copy of my book, go to nicolasbook.com. And that's a URL that I just change to point at whatever opt-in page I've set up for that particular conference. And giving stuff away is a great way to collect leads as well. So that works really well. Yeah.
I mean, I make people.
So tell it. Oh, sorry, we've still got a delay. That's a bit annoying, but we're working with it. Tell me about your first time you started organising your own events. Then.
So that's a good question. I started organising. Oh, actually, my first one was with my dad when we were running an IT company. We decided to run a seminar about the future technologies that businesses could take advantage of. The stuff that was actually available now, but felt like it was like technology from tomorrow.
Yeah.
And obviously it was a sales thing. We had like 4 or 5 different products that we had on our books, and we got someone different to speak about each one. So sometimes someone from one of the suppliers. I think my dad talked about one. I talked about one. And we sold tickets to it so that people would actually value it. So it was like 45 quid for a half day. This is
that's quite good.
15,
on the South Coast.
18 years ago, something like that. And we booked out the Sussex Yacht Club all morning and then lunch. So for your 45 quid, you got to come and, I think you got 6 talks, networking, and a nice lunch at the end. And I think a third of the people who attended turned into clients. So that's when I really realized the power of events.
That is really good.
And some of those just found us because we put a press release in the local paper, things like that. So.
Free press is always a good way to sell tickets on things, isn't it?
Yeah. After that, it was a while later. I mean, I think we ran a couple of those because obviously it was quite successful. And then when I got into gamification, I started running local meetup events on the Meetup platform. I don't know if anyone's come across that. It's quite a nice way to manage a small community of people interested in a specific topic. And we would do a gamification and something type event every 2 or 3 months, depending on how busy we were. So, and the busiest one I remember was gamification and health and well-being. Lots of people came along to see how they could gamify their way to a happier, healthier lifestyle. I think we had like 99 people sign up for that event, and that was quite scary because the venue had a capacity of 60. But on the plus side, with a free event, a third of people aren't going to turn up, particularly if it's raining.
Yeah. And it's good when you know the numbers, isn't it? It makes it less terrifying.
Oh, I was still terrified.
I'm never terrified about the speaking, but I hate that thought that people aren't going to come. It's a bit like when you organise a party when you're younger and you're terrified that nobody's going to come to your party. That's how it feels to me. But most people book in. I mean, I don't know how you find this on your more high ticket events, but I used to do £147 a day workshops in Gatwick at the Holiday Inn. It's quite a nice venue actually, and early bird booking was 97 because I was always trying to encourage people to book early because 50% of people would book in the last week given the chance. And I'm like that as well. I never want to commit in advance as well, so it has to be a damn good discount to get me to do that. But I do really enjoy it.
You need a bit of timeliness to encourage people to commit to buying a ticket as well.
Yes. So tell us about the one you're organising at the moment then. This is your opportunity to go. So where would you start? Where do you personally start when you're thinking, I've had an idea for an event? What do you start with?
Okay, I start with the theme. So in this instance, I already know my audience, okay, which is the gamification community. So I know I want to put on an event for them where they get to, basically the underlying purpose of my event is to expand the industry, make it more successful. That helps me. It helps everyone in it. So that's the underlying ethos. Then there's the idea of a community event where we get together, we share best practices, we share tips and tricks, all that sort of thing, and maybe network, maybe get clients. Okay, but mostly it's about knowledge sharing. So I start from that, and then I think I'm going to have a theme for this year, and the theme helps you then select speakers. It helps you get sponsors. It helps pull the whole thing together and make it feel cohesive. I've been to so many conferences where you've got speaker after speaker, and you've no idea why they're in that track or on that day. That sort of thing. So you, I like it to have a flow, to have a meaning, have a purpose. So the first conference I ran 4 years ago, the theme was a hero's journey. It was about overcoming obstacles and overcoming failure in the gamification industry. So I made all the speakers come and talk about stuff that went wrong in their projects.
Nice.
Yeah. And that feeling of scaredness you were talking about. I was scared I would have no speakers willing to talk about their failures. But actually, it was absolutely fine because they knew everyone was doing it. I had 30 speakers. They all spoke about something that went wrong, all but one.
Wow. And how they overcame it, which is, everybody loves a hero's journey, don't they? Yes,
correct. So that was good. This year's conference, I would just randomly having a conversation with someone. They'd be like, "What's the theme this year?" And I just came up with it in mid-conversation, and I went, based on their reaction, "Okay, that's really good." Mentioned it in a couple of other conversations, and the feedback was unremittingly positive. So I went for it.
Well, 2020 has been the year of disruption, hasn't it?
Yeah, and so the theme is disruption.
Yeah, nice.
Very. Yeah. But it's the fact I've got two spins on it that I quite like. One is it's been a year of disruption. So how has gamification helped you survive that, maybe? Yeah, or even thrive. And the other one is gamification is a bit of a disruptor itself. So how have you used gamification to disrupt
an industry or a company or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Or a process or a behavior. Yeah. So
or status quo. Yeah.
So it's lending itself already to some really interesting talk ideas that people are submitting.
Oh, okay. So then is that the next thing then, to put out the call for speakers and let people know the theme?
Well, what you really want next is sponsors, but I always leave things too late. So I've launched the call for sponsors at the same time as I've launched the call for speakers.
Why do you need the sponsors first?
Mainly because it gives you an opportunity to give them more marketing, which is one of the things they're paying for.
Of course.
So if you send out the call for speakers with a sponsor's name emblazoned on it, then it's a bit chicken and egg. Sometimes sponsors don't want to sponsor until they know who the speakers are, and sometimes speakers don't want to come until they know there's plenty of support for the conference. So it's good to have a sponsor in the back, shall we say?
Yeah.
One of the things
how do you? So let me backtrack a little bit. Mm-hmm. So do you know all the speakers in advance? Do you ask for referrals, and how do you contact the sponsors? Are you going into companies that you've already decided you like would fit?
So that's how I work. Yeah, I go into my little black book of contacts and think who would I get to sponsor this particular day or this theme. The first thing I do is obviously approach past sponsors and give them the first opportunity. Yeah, there's got to be a loyalty reward for doing that. This year, I'm about to announce that one of them has come back and is a key sponsor, which is great, but the others have run out of money because of disruption. So I've got to find some new ones. So there's room for some others this year, which is, it's nice actually, not having to fill a particular slot with the same name and the same logo. But it's always nice to have them back anyway, because it shows that your conference is valued. This has been the fourth year. Then I have a list of companies that I'm interested in the industry. So I will work through those, see who I've got connections with, and then reach out to them. I quite like this bit because even if they don't become sponsors, they tend to end up being connections, doing something else useful in the long run. Yeah, so it's always a worthwhile exercise, even if they don't sponsor. And I only ever tend to reach out to the CEOs, as high as possible.
I was just about to ask you that. Yeah.
Well, because then they can delegate down and just say, make this happen. Whereas
that's much easier.
If you go to chief marketing officers, which is one of the things that happen, that's the one that's easier to get the details of. Their name will already be on a press release, things like that. Then you've always got to provide a lot more information,
because
exactly
they have
who
to
the
sell
audience
it in.
is and much more detail. Whereas from a CEO, they can just go, make it happen without, just from broad stroke stuff. So I'm a less effort sort of person on that one. and then show them it works.
Yeah, and it's as long as it's not scary to approach the CEO, you're making a possible contact for work at a later date anyway, as well, aren't you? Either way, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really valuable. The other thing I do is I set up Google Alerts on bits of news in the gamification industry. What's interesting about that is it tends to be you tend to get different results from what you do if you just did a Google search. So it tends to be more aimed at press releases and news items. So anyone who pops up in that, they tend to have a marketing department, they tend to have a budget, they tend to already be spending money on these sort of things. So they're like a low-hanging fruit. They're always very interesting.
PR specifically.
So you always have great conversations with them, and they'll come and do something. But also these ones, again, they're the ones that need all that supporting information because they'll have to sell it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
You haven't mentioned money in specifically yet. Do you have a budget? Do you when you're looking for sponsors, do you have a target to get?
I do. That changes depending on the costs of putting on the conference for me. Okay. So for what I tend to want to achieve with the sponsorship is to cover all the costs and then use ticket sales to take the conference above and beyond. Yeah. To get the real keynote speaker or to do some really fun stuff around it to make it a better experience.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, the sponsor, I need to cover the venue costs, catering, flying some of the speakers in, some other bits and pieces. Normally it's filming the talks costs $4 or $5 grand. That sort of thing. So you've got quite a lot of costs.
Overhead.
You've just got to cover before you even start selling tickets, really. I mean, if you've got a sponsor that can cover all that, then you can sell the tickets without feeling stressed.
Yes.
Yeah, which means actually you do a better job, actually. But it is risky.
I once put on an event where I said to my boss, "What's the budget?" And he said 0, or as close to it as possible. And it didn't mean that he didn't want to spend anything. He just wanted to be reassured every time we talked that I'd at least got 3 quotations for everything. I'd maximise the sponsorship in terms of people donating services in return for sponsorship rather than money and stuff like that. So, but that was an interesting exercise to bring it in as close to 0 as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can nearly always get a sponsor, in-kind sponsors for things like a gamified app for the whole conference. Yeah, in-kind sponsor, tick. That sort of thing. I mean, this year's interesting because the costs are a lot lower. For instance, I don't have to have a film crew because this platform's going to record every talk anyway, as long as I remember to hit record.
I think you should pay someone to be responsible for hitting the record button.
I'm going to have a checklist. It's like, right, every speaker do this. Yeah. I'm not taking a chance on that one.
No, because that would be tragic. So it's all different doing it virtually then.
It's less risky. Okay, so I mean there are obviously costs. There's a cost to the platform itself that you use.
Yeah,
there's probably a couple of grand there, and then there's quite a lot of digital assets that need creating. So there's a lot more design work, I think. And you think there'd be a lot of
design work and editing.
You'd think there'd be a lot of design work for a normal conference anyway, because you've got lanyards, you've got posters, pop-up banners and stuff. But it's all standard stuff for most designers, so they can do it really quite quickly and easily. Whereas online, you're coming up with new things, new sizes,
It has to work on all platforms, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's actually quite a lot of thinking for them to do. So it seems to be more work. So that's costing more.
Yeah, that's what they're telling you.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking that. But
all right.
Also, I'm doing a brand refresh this year as well, so I'd quite like to cover the cost of that in everything else, which makes sense. So,
and then how are you going to enable the social aspect? Because I mean, one of the things I most love about going to conferences is just being in a place with a load of people who've got the same interests as you, and even if you sit next to someone randomly, they're quite likely to be interesting and interested. So how do you do that when you're doing it virtually?
That's a good question. And I have to say I've attended a lot of virtual conferences this year to test out how people are doing it.
Oh, okay.
And I've spoken at quite a few, obviously. So I've seen it from both sides. And I've committed to a platform that enables me to get as close to that as I think I can online. So the platform I'm using, it looks like this when you're doing the main talk. I'll be up there, or a speaker will be up there, and they can share their screen, the usual stuff. Or you can have multiple people up and do a panel session. But in between sessions, it's got a nice visual layout, which is round tables. So people can sit at a table of 6 to 8 people and have basically a small mini Zoom call within the conference. So you've got a nicer, tighter community feeling in that. And I'm particularly going to set up areas like a cafe area where people can go and do that and know that's what they're going to do. The exhibitor areas, like the virtual exhibitors, they have a similar thing. They have a table each, but it's got a logo on, and they man it. And so you can go to them and chat to them about their product and service.
And how will that actually be like this? They'll be able to actually see each other, or are you giving them avatars?
No, they'll be able to see each other. So every single person, cool. So I might have like 500 people logged in, all able to share their video, which is why you've got to be careful about the platform, because it's got to cope with an awful lot of bandwidth.
Yes.
When you're doing that, because there's 500 people all having 5-6 person meetings or one-to-ones. If you set up with the right space, you can do that. There's even a feature in this platform where you can set up a period and people can volunteer to go into a speed networking thing. So you can set it. I want to be doing one-to-one meetings with people at random. And so you click it and you set it, and then every 5 minutes it'll switch over to someone else who's also interested.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
So we'll be doing that amongst other things. And I think I mentioned this last week, but I'm quite excited because I've found a way to embed games into the whiteboard software within the table. It needs a bit more testing because I found it not that user friendly.
I was going to say we haven't managed to get a whiteboard up yet, have we?
But I use it successfully today with my students, so it gets easier.
Does it? And none of this and all of this doesn't depend on your personal broadband at home. I hope it's all being taken care of by the hosted conference software.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh,
that would be tragic, wouldn't it?
I mean, so that's the other thing to worry about is your speakers and them dialing in. What if it was you and the technical issues you were having earlier, and you're a keynote speaker? Yeah. So this is where you have to have. I mean, this is what I'm coming up with. I've got like, who's going to be the backup speaker? Yeah. So you can slot someone in, that sort of thing. And I'm having a few talks because some people are shy and don't want to do live ones. So I've got a few that are being pre-recorded, so I could slot those in potentially, things like that.
Right.
So you've got to think about a few different things. Oh. Keep it going.
I was going to say more to it. You think it would be easier to a virtual one, but it doesn't seem like it is. It's just.
Well, do you know what? I'm less stressed by it than running an in-person one. Because
interesting.
Well, I'm quite confident with technology, but also everyone there, they all are having. I mean, every single video call I've joined for the last 2 or 3 months, there's been someone on the call who had tech issues, right? So everyone's completely and utterly used to that at the moment. Yeah. You expect it to be slickly run from the organizer side, but then they also know the speakers are dialing in remotely. Yeah. And I will be having speakers from some far-flung parts of the world, so there's bound to be some issues, but we'll cope with it. We'll roll with it.
The main thing is to tell them the good light. Good light is the most crucial thing.
No, good internet is the most crucial thing. Good light's the next thing.
Oh, right. Yeah. A tidy background, third thing.
I'm less worried about that because that gives people things to look at. Yeah.
Yes.
No, decent sound, decent video, then lighting, then background. But to be honest, and interesting stuff to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
the
it.
key.
I mean, me, for
thing,
instance, I mean, as a speaker, I feel beholden to make sure I've got that sorted for my end of things as well. So I've got a really good quality business broadband here.
Backgrounds.
I know, it was perfect timing, wasn't it?
It was great.
So here I've got business quality broadband.
I'm just going to laugh at it.
I've got backup of like unlimited. All right, I'll start again, right? So as a speaker, I feel beholden to being able to be online and deliver my talk for wherever I'm doing it in the world. So from my home office, I've got business quality broadband, okay, not your home consumer one, but one with uncontended and faster support and various other things. I've got a duplicate setup, basically a second laptop with video camera and stuff that I can plug in if this one, for some reason, decides to do Windows updates all day or something. I've got my unlimited data connection on my phone if I need to hotspot in an emergency, which you do quite often. And then I've got a co-working space, half an hour down the road, that I can run to in an emergency and do it from there, if I've got time.
Absolutely. Cycle to an emergency.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm not sure what else I could do, but I've got enough of that in the bag that I feel confident I can deliver something, whatever.
Yeah. And do you think this is the way forward? Do you think that once companies have realised that they can do successful virtual conferences, that there'll be less normal conferences to go to? Or do you think there'll always be a certain number of people who love to go out in person and meet people?
Great question. So I think there will always be a number of people who want to go and press the flesh in person. However, I think companies are loving not having to pay travel, not having to pay expenses, not having to lose people for all the travel time. Yeah. I don't think they'll ever go back. Yeah, it'll be a rare industry that says yes to it.
Do you think people will just do once a year things, perhaps in person? Everything else will be. I
think there might be more local events. Yeah, so you can get some of that, but there'll be very few international ones. Only the very biggest stuff, I think, will come back. Like the Oscars or something. People will always go to that, I think.
It's one thing that's going to be changed forever, isn't it? A bit like the whole thing of having all your staff in a highly priced office in the centre of a city. I think that's gone forever as well. But we don't know, do we? Can't tell.
We don't know yet. But there is something about the centre of town that people like to work in because they like to have things to go and do at lunchtime. So I think there'll be demand for co-working spaces in those places. Yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
Because again, it can get a bit lonely, can't it, on your own at home?
Unlike me a second ago.
Well, I've had everyone coming and going here today. Lonely would be a fine thing occasionally. So when have you ever? Go on.
I'm going to ask you, what have you organised? Because you speak at events.
Yeah, I've got quite a variety of things. I started off. I'm very bossy, as you may have noticed. And, so even from a youngster, I've been very not afraid of organising things. And some of the first things I organised a fashion show at the club when I was 21. I got all the what possesses me. I get these ideas and I just can't stop acting on them. So I got something like 20 local designers and shops to say that they wanted to put their stuff in. I organised all my mates to do the modelling because they were all quite young and slim in those days. We built a fashion show down the middle of the escape club. We had a mate of mine, Michael, do all food. We did Creole food for the evening. So he was selling jambalaya and filet prawn gumbo and all that stuff. And that was a big deal. And they made, the escape made money. Michael made money. Can't remember at all the details of whether I made any money. I doubt it. But then we went on to do another fashion. I went to another fashion show in Gray's Antique Market where we had it was an open evening to open the vintage Victory Cafe, 1950s cafe. Mm-hmm. Got loads of people to do, like Vidal Sassoon did the hair for free. Someone else did music. My sister supplied a jazz trio. We built a catwalk over the River Tyburn that ran through the bottom of the antiques and arcade. It was an amazing event, really. Again, that was the one I had to do as close to zero as possible. I managed to get, as I probably mentioned before, I managed to get 500 bottles of Baby Sham and 200 glasses, or the original Baby Sham glasses. And then we did a record launch. So I organised a record launch at a nightclub in London, the Garage nightclub, with lots of free Stolichnaya vodka and all that stuff. And then I did two. We did well. I can't say in real honest truth, I can't say I organised these two, but the Money Gym had two events at the Cavendish Conference Centre in London, which is a lovely venue, actually really nice. And then we had 200 people at that. One of which was property investing, and we had Martin Lewis from Channel 4's Money Show. Is it Homes Under the Hammer? He was quite an entertaining chap. So we had to star wrangle someone there. And then the other one was just a very good friend of mine who was a big star in the internet marketing world, Brett McFall, and he was doing a World Internet Summit. So we tacked on our event just after that and had 200 people for 2 or 3 days, 2 days, I think. So yeah, we've done, and then I've done lots and lots of things where we just had 20 or 30 people in a room, taught them stuff for a day, and then made them an offer at the end, and that converted very well, very often to clients. So yeah, I'm not scared of it. I wouldn't. Last thing I did was just before I came back from Greece and did something in the holiday period between Christmas and New Year, and my daughter came and filmed it all to make a product to go onto my membership site. And I don't think we've ever got around to editing that. I think I just put it up raw as it was. So not as good as it could have been. But, editing's expensive and boring and time consuming. So I think, if people get the feel for what it was like to be there, if you don't edit it too slickly, that's what I'm telling myself anyway. And so, yeah, quite a lot of stuff. But I definitely prefer being the talent rather than the organizer. That's for sure. I like being looked after. I like nice travel and hotels, and I like being the star who gets to stand on stage. I really enjoy that.
It's definitely easier. I've chaired a couple of conferences. So this is where you go along, and as well as maybe speaking, you just chair and introduce everyone, and you have to introduce the day and wrap things up at the end. And it sounds really simple, but actually it's unbelievably stressful because you've got to pay attention to every speaker and what they're saying, and potentially, come up with questions, help the audience ask questions, and then tie it all together at the end of the day. And you don't necessarily agree with every speaker either.
No.
And some of them put you to sleep, of course. So you're like, oh my God, I can't hear what he said. I have to skip over that one.
And again, you're star wrangling, aren't you? Because you're the person people come to if there's a problem with one of the speakers. So. Yeah. And quite often you just have a volunteer. I mean, I get volunteer chairs for my conference as well. But I choose people who know as many of the speakers as possible. So it's a slightly different dynamic. So it works. It seems to work all right. Yeah. But to pull it all together again, I think we can say that it's a great way of attracting clients, whether you're organising your own events or speaking at other people's. It's always worked for me. It's worked for you.
Definitely. Also, although it's risky and quite expensive sometimes to put on an event, if you then look at, because there's roughly speaking, my 4 conferences so far, actually I won't count this year, I'll count the 3 physical ones. The first year, I put it on at very short notice, and I probably lost about £10,000. But it was a successful event, but I didn't have enough time to get it in sponsors' budgets, basically.
Right.
But I made it happen. And then the next year was a bit different, made about £20,000. So I was like, okay. And because we'd had a whole year to plan for it. Then the next year, I probably lost 20,000. Wrong location. Some other costs were too high, not flexible enough with the venue, some other things, quite a lot of risk. And it sounds really expensive, doesn't it? But if you look at how much a company will pay to go and exhibit at a big conference, I'm aware.
Phenomenally expensive.
Yeah. So I'm aware of one company that came and sponsored one of the years of my conference. So it goes to a conference I've spoken at, and they normally spend about £45,000 on a stand and paying for that bit, plus whatever their costs are of building the stand and manning it and all the rest of it. That was their payment to the organisers. And then you think about the amount of reputation you get from organising your own conference, and the cost was what, 10 or 20 grand, and maybe you make a profit. So
I'm remembering more events. We had some property investing friends who used to take a stand at the property show in Excel, and they used to pay us to come up and man the stand with them. And they brought supercars one year, so they had all the expense and hassle of getting a Koenigsegg. Have you ever seen a Koenigsegg?
Yeah, nice.
Oh yeah, he had a Koenigsegg, a beautiful car, and he had to drive it really slow. Had to get it up there, and then they had to drive it really slowly through Excel to the stand. And there was lots of dolly birds around in short skirts, and then there was a few sort of trusted friends who could talk about the company because we were actually investors with them. So that was, and they used to pay for our travel and expenses and take us out for dinner, and it was great fun. And we used to do it for free. I mean, I don't know why, but we did, and it was great fun. So there's been so many different kinds of events, and I think if you get really creative with it, that stand was mobbed, absolutely mobbed, because everybody wanted to get near to that car. All the men investors were really keen on that car. It was mad. And I remember another event where there were 3 deep. We had a tiny little stand, and we were all sort of in the corridor thing. But investors were so keen to, take a place with this company. They were like 3 deep, waving their checkbooks at us. It was hilarious.
So that's good.
That was great fun.
When you were talking about the early one, when you did the modelling show, you reminded me that I think maybe the first event I was part of organising was me and a couple of friends at university. We went to university in Portsmouth, and we hired the Isle of Wight ferry to run a party on because there's a bar. So then we sold tickets. So we had to get a DJ, sell the tickets, hide the ferry, and it went round and round the Isle of Wight for the amount of time we'd had it hired for. It was just immense fun as well. But I learned quite a lot from it because I learned that I was rubbish at selling tickets to an event like that. But the girls we paid to sell tickets did amazingly.
Well, they would, wouldn't they? Yes. And that's funny you say that, because I think if you have a bright idea for something that sounds like fun when you're young, and you actually go ahead and do it, and then you have quite a good result, whether it's just the fun element or you made some money as well, then you can end up getting into all sorts of event organising that you wouldn't have done normally. And then I remembered, it is a brilliant time to plug one of my clients, who's Roger Woodall from Bournemouth Sevens, who's just launched his new podcast, and it's called The Eventful Entrepreneur. And it's doing great guns, number 3 in iTunes. And so anyone who's interested in event organising of any kind, I know that you're going to get lots of value from Roger's podcast. So
that's very good.
Go and check it out.
I plug him every week, but this time it was the most relevant of all. So well done.
Sorry. Go on, you do feel free to plug some of your clients whenever you want to. At least I'm not plugging myself.
Okay, that's true.
I think we're coming to the end of our time. So, so what are you looking forward to most this week?
This week, I've got a couple of workshops to run tomorrow, and one of which is 3 hours long online, which is a bit of a challenge, I think, but we run that every couple of weeks. So that's good. And on a personal note, I'm going to do a Hungarian-themed evening with Jess, who wandered by.
Goulash.
Hungarian goulash, absolutely. So I'll have to learn how to cook that. So it's,
and are the Hungarian wines any good?
There are some good Hungarian wines. It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Do I
essential,
have
any? I'd say.
I may find one.
You might have to go up to the what's that wine place in Portslade?
Maybe I'm being interviewed for 2 other podcasts as well, for episodes of different
10 Green Bottles, Phoebe says. That's the name of the place.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, like that one.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the other thing you said? You're doing other people's podcasts?
Oh, yeah, I'm being interviewed on 2 different podcasts next week as well.
Nice. So, becoming quite the podcast star, aren't you?
That takes me up to about 9 interviews, I think, something like that.
Good stuff. Okay.
What are you going to be up to?
I'm going to be carrying on my Facebook ads. I'm going to be reading a book that I've downloaded from Amazon called 1%, the book that the banks don't want you to read, which sounds awfully dull, but is awfully interesting to the kind of things I'm interested in at the moment. And that's pretty much it at the moment. I don't think I've got many social events lined up, but a quiet weekend for me.
Okay. That sounds very nice. Good to have a quiet weekend every now and then.
Yeah, always good to have a rest. Good stuff. All right. Well, I'll see you next week then.
Until then, and good luck with the editing on this one.
Yes, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge than it is usually, but we'll persevere.
You're listening to the Pocket Podcast with Pete Jenkins and Nicola Cairncross. You can find me at gamificationplus.uk and Nicola at clicksandleads.com.